Buenas tardes. En castellano agradeceré la invitación y la oportunidad de la organización de estar aquí en la mesa presentando a Jennifer Greene. Me han pedido que lo haga en inglés, así que allá vamos. So, thank you very much for the opportunity and the honor to introduce you Professor Jennifer Greene. She has a very, very long CV. So I will present you some details of her CV just to give a view of the importance of and the opportunity to be with her here at these 3 days. Jennifer got her PhD at the Stanford University in 1976. Since then, she was already working as a specialist evaluator. And she started as a professor at the University of Illinois in Urbana, Champaign, in the Department of Educational Psychology at the College of Education in 1999, so 20 years ago, if I am right. There we met her, and she directed more than 25 research projects, most of them in evaluation issues, evaluating projects and programs in education and social science. One of her production is the book, Mixing Methods in Social Inquiry. I just brought it to invite you to read it. It's really thoughtful and interesting for us. She's expert in methodology. She taught, more than teach now, methods courses at the University of Illinois and before at other universities in the United States. She published more than 60 articles in peer-reviewed journals. She wrote more than 40 book chapters, was invited in, as I counted, 49 as a keynote speaker in more than almost 50 conference and important events. In the last year, she was invited in almost 3-4 events each year. Just honors and awards. In 2016, she got the Campus Award for Graduate Student Mentoring at the University of Illinois, Distinguished Fellow Award, School of Critical Studies in Education at Auckland University in 2012, Distinguished Scholar, Aalborg University in Denmark in 2011, American Education Research Association Fellow in 2010, and a long list of distinguished and honors. I don't want to bother you with the long list, I'm sorry, Jennifer. But the most important thing, I think she is a very good person, a good friend, and strongly socially engaged in different processes and for democratic issues, the democratization of the university and the democratization of Urbana, Champaign territory. So I think we have a lot to learn with her, and thank you very much to be here and just let you listen her. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fatima, for the lovely introduction. It's interesting. I don't think it's a coincidence that this College of Education and Social Work has made a turn towards mixed method social inquiry. I have long thought that what we do as educators and social workers is so much more difficult than what physicists and chemists do. Apologies to physicists and chemists who might be here. And I have support from a very senior educational researcher in the United States, a scholar named David Berliner. He's retired now. But he once said, and many of us have quoted this many times, we educational researchers do our work under conditions that physicists would find impossible. So I think it's a natural turn within our fields to think of multiple ways that we can better understand the complex, dynamic, contextual, and always changing phenomena that we study: student learning, family well-being. So I just wanted to capitalize on that because I've become more and more convinced as I've aged that educational research, social welfare are much more complex topics, although we don't get paid nearly as much as physicists and chemists. We do our work under conditions they would find impossible. So it's a wonderful honor to be back here in Valladolid. I have very much enjoyed, thanks to Barto and the college, my prior visits to your city, and I'm delighted to be back even in the rain. I feel welcome here amongst many researchers and scholars of like mind and heart. I've been invited to your community to share my current thinking and some of my past work on the topic of mixed methods approaches to social research, social and educational research. Specifically about the affordances and the opportunities that are created in a mixed methods context when you include research procedures, methods, assumptions from very different social science research traditions. What are the opportunities in such a mixed method study to understand the social phenomena we study more fully? I don't know if the conceptualization and practice of mixed methods has become a full-fledged methodology, if there were a college or a group of people who decided what's a methodology and what isn't. I don't know if mixed methods has become a full-fledged methodology. My questioning of this suggests that it has not yet. But then when I reflect on this question, I don't really think that's the most important question to ask or to answer at this time. At this juncture, a mixed methods approach to social inquiry has a deep toehold, a deep presence in many domains of social research and educational research, a toehold that has yielded research results of important resonance, value, and sometimes unique insights. So for now, let's concentrate on doing mixed methods well, doing it thoughtfully, carefully, and defensively. For whatever the status of a mixed methods approach to social inquiry, whether it's a full-fledged methodology or not, its potential benefits of generative insights, novel perspectives, and results of direct relevance to practice have already been demonstrated across many fields, contexts, cultures, and countries. This is the Mixed Methods International Research Association, now about 5, 6, 7 years old, holds a conference every 2 years. So if you get interested, you might take a look for it in the coming years. One last introductory comment, and then I'll get to the heart of what I'd like to share with you. As Fatima has said, I went to graduate school in the 1970s, before many of you were present on this earth. At that time, there was only one dominant methodology for social science, including education. I went and got a degree in educational psychology. If you had asked me at that time, in the 1970s when I was in graduate school, if I wanted to be a social science methodologist, I probably would have said, nah, I don't really want to be a methodologist. I want a job that's more exciting and more substantively important, actually contributes important information to education and teaching. Methodology, I would have thought, is only about the proper methods properly applied. I'd prefer work that included the occasional splash of wonder and excitement. But a few years into my first job, so this is the late 1970s now, the tidy and orderly world of social and educational research was turned upside down with the great qualitative constructivist revolution of that era. And the ensuing decades, the decades thereafter, of further paradigmatic and methodological revolutions and ongoing, sometimes frantic learning about completely different ways to do educational and social research, different from what I had learned in graduate school, which was the traditional scientific method, and also learning about the philosophical, ethical, and socio-political dimensions of research methodology. I had never known that research methodology was a political adventure, carried along certain values and stances. And that's what I started to learn about in the great qualitative and other methodological revolutions. I found these dimensions fascinating. Again, I was a child of the 60s, so anything political was fascinating to me. Up to this point, I'd never thought about methodology as a passionate or political enterprise. Further, because my primary field of expertise and practice is educational program evaluation, which is significantly about passions, values, and politics, I found myself redirecting my work. A little lost my place here. I found myself redirecting my work on how to do defensible and generative educational and social inquiry. I became, at least in part, a methodologist, a person who studies and cares about and wonders about the power of method to shape findings, to shape values, to carry political stances, and so forth. And in the few decades since then, or the many decades since then, I've become wholly convinced of the central importance and the power of methodology in our work as social scientists. I've come to believe that methodology, how we do our work, is the central sculptor of the data generated and therefore of the substantive knowledge and insights gained through that inquiry. Methodology is fully complicit in the knowledge that's generated in a study and in the values and ideals advanced in that study. Methodology indeed matters. It is not a neutral tool. It shapes what we come to know, and it shapes who gets to know it, and it shapes the values that accompany our work. As suggested by the title of this presentation, there are two main parts. In the first part, I'll present a portrait of contemporary thinking about mixed methods approaches to social inquiry. I will use selected commonplaces of social science methodology to do this. These include, what are the key questions asked, what are the mixed methods purposes and design alternatives, and mixed methods data analysis. I'll do this from my own vantage point within the mixed methods community, but I will also endeavor to share and portray other vantage points as relevant. There's considerable overlap among mixed methods thinkers, but also some persistent differences. In this first part of my presentation, I'm aspiring primarily to be inclusively educative. So the first part of this presentation is demystifying mixed methods, make it ordinary and plain and available for all of you to think about and consider as something you may or may not wish to take a part in. In the second part of this presentation, I will re-engage a discussion of mixed method social inquiry from a different set of angles that represent places of disquiet, divergence, and some tensions. This second part represents the remystification of the presentation title. I will wonder aloud if and how these strands of disquiet and divergence trouble the current popularity of mixed methodology for social and educational inquiry? Or perhaps alternatively, how these eddies of disquiet signal future inspiration and aspiration for mixed methods educational and social research. And I will conclude with some ideas for generative ways going forward. I will provide liberal examples throughout the presentation. So let's get started. I also welcome comments and questions throughout. I may pause every now and then to see if there are, but if you don't want to wait for a pause, I would really welcome comments and questions and contributions throughout. Listening to me for a full hour will get tiresome for all of us. So this is the outline for the first part. I'd like to go through these different topics and say a little bit about where we are and what are the issues involved in each of these particular topics. So this is the demystifying. What is mixed methods inquiry anyway? So let's first start with conceptualizing mixed methods. As I just said, what is a mixed methods approach to social inquiry? And I use the word social inquiry because my own field of practice is evaluation, but many of you are probably researchers. So inquiry to me covers both research and evaluation. Why would a social inquirer choose a mixed methods approach for a given study? What does a mixed methods approach distinctively contribute to social inquiry? So here's a common definition. Mixed methods approach to social inquiry involves the use of more than one method, methodology, and possibly philosophical paradigm in the same study in service of better understanding the important phenomena being studied. Social and educational phenomena are inherently complex, dynamic, and they're often contextual. They change from place to place, time to time. And so they can be better understood from more than one methodological lens or standpoint. Within this definition, to me it makes the most sense to mix methods around the key phenomena or the key constructs we are trying to understand. Learning among children, challenges for pregnant mothers or unwed mothers. So thinking about using more than one method, methodology, and or paradigm to assess and understand key phenomena in our research questions or our research design. In this way, the methodological resources that we have are targeted on the most central or the most important phenomena in that context. Further, within this conceptualization, there are these three levels I keep repeating, and I think this distinction is important. We can mix at the level of method. We can mix a set of interviews with a survey. Interviews and surveys are methods, techniques. We could also mix at the level of methodology. A methodology is a coherent logic of inquiry. It includes sampling, instrumentation, the kinds of questions that are addressed, kinds of analyses that are done, quality criteria for judging the quality of the data and the results, and writing up the study or more. Then the third level are philosophical paradigms. These include philosophical assumptions that frame and justify the methods and methodologies used. Most mixed methods work is conducted at the level of mixing methods. Some mixed methods work includes mixing at the methodological level, and less mixed methods work includes mixing at the philosophical level, often because the assumptions of two different philosophical stances are thought to be incompatible. We'll come back to that. So there's the paradigm, paradigm, missed that slide. The philosophical paradigm makes these four sets of assumptions. You can see the labels for them. What's the nature of the social world? What's the nature of warranted knowledge? How best to generate understanding or the methodological assumption? And what values are advanced. Popular paradigms often used in mixed method studies include these two. Post-positivism, which is our most common quantitative paradigm, our most common paradigm and set of assumptions for doing survey research or experimentation. Constructivism would be our most common and popular paradigm for doing qualitative inquiry. Within the mixed methods community, other popular paradigms are pragmatism, which is an American invention. John Dewey is the author of pragmatism. as well as critical social science, which I think all of you are more familiar with than we are. And those are just some elaborations of two common paradigms, the post-positivist and the constructivist, and what the specifics of the assumptions are. I'll let our translator read them a little bit. Gracias, Carlos. It's also important to note that mixed method social inquiry is not restricted to numbers and words, which these two dominant paradigms collect, numbers or words, representations of human phenomena numerically or in terms of text. Creative examples abound. Beyond numbers and words, creative mixed methods analysts use spatiality, how things are organized in space, photos, art, and other representations of meaning in human lives. Let's skip the next paragraph, Carlos. So my mixed methods vision, what has attracted me to this field, is the following. Oops, sorry, not there. It's not on the slide, so Carlos will have to translate. This comes both from my methodological background and from my being a child of the 60s. The 1960s in the United States were a very political time with all kinds of movements and protests and movements being started at that time. So for me, I was drawn to mixed methods because it offers an opportunity for meaningfully and respectfully engaging with difference. A mixed methods of perspective legitimizes multiple ways of seeing and hearing, multiple ways of making sense of the social world, multiple standpoints on what is important and what's to be valued and cherished. A mixed methods perspective recognizes that each methodological standpoint is inevitably partial. So multiple approaches, each legitimized, each valued, and each positioned at a different angle, can offer a more complete and more full understanding of the human endeavors that we study. And I think we increasingly need this respectful engagement with difference in our currently beleaguered world. I'll return to this vision at the end of my remarks. So now I'll move on to key inquiry questions in mixed methods inquiry. All social inquiry starts with well-conceptualized research or evaluation questions. Some questions can be phrased to explicitly invite a mixed methods approach. For example, questions that are phrased, to what extent, invites a quantitative method, and in what ways invites a qualitative or critical perspective. So to what extent and in what ways was the program implemented as designed is a classic mixed methods question. Or in terms of outcomes, in what ways and to what extent were both intended and important unintended outcomes apparent among program participants. I also often target the most important constructs that are being studied in this study. I'm an educational program evaluator, so often the most important constructs are things like learning, sense of self as a learner. These constructs usually relate to the quality and meaningfulness of the program design, implementation, or outcomes. Once you establish your inquiry questions, then a mixed methods design can be considered. Mixed methods designed are importantly enhanced by first identifying specific purposes for mixing. What am I hoping to accomplish by mixing methods that I cannot accomplish by using another methodology? These specific purposes represent better forms of better understanding, which is the major overall purpose of mixed methods. Major all purpose is to achieve some kind of better understanding than I could with a single methodology. There's different forms of better understanding, which I'd like to share with you now. Some 35 years ago, I worked with two graduate students at that time, Valerie Caracelli and Wendy Graham, to conduct a literature review of 57 mixed methods studies that had used a mix of methods. Some were published, some were not. The idea of mixing methods had emerged quite organically from what was then the qualitative revolution in mainstream social science that began in the 1970s, and so there were many mixed method studies at that time, especially in my field of evaluation. Our mixed methods literature review was a wonderfully generative study. Among the findings was a set of 5 specific purposes that people laid out for mixing methods in their study, and some key dimensions of mixed methods design. While the overall purpose for mixing methods is better understanding, this review revealed 5 different forms of better understanding, 4 of which continue as viable options today. I will use a particular context to illustrate these 5 different purposes and include the one that is no longer relevant. And here's the example that I would like to use. It's a study of the character and stability or instability of the educational pathways of children in grades kindergarten through high school when their families or their parents are homeless. What happens to schooling in homeless families? The intent of this study is to develop some educational policies for children in temporarily homeless families. The first purpose that came up in our review is one that many of you have probably heard about, triangulation. Triangulation seeks corroboration towards enhanced validity of or confidence in the results that we get from 2 different methods. The different methods are intended to measure the same construct, and this concept has an interesting history in both quantitative and qualitative traditions. Yet in implementation, when you actually think about it, getting the same results from 2 different methods that come from 2 different traditions is quite challenging to envision and to implement. In this hypothetical context, triangulation might focus on the key construct of students' school attendance, so when and how are these children in homeless conditions able to attend school. We could mix at the method level to strengthen confidence in the findings related to school attendance patterns and reasons. For example, we could mix an analysis of school attendance records with teacher and student descriptive accounts of extended student absences. This is a triangulation account. We're trying to get convergence. We're mixing at the method level only. The second purpose that surfaced in our work is that of complementarity. This is similar to triangulation, except instead of converging 2 data sets on the same phenomena, we use a mix of methods to get more pieces of this phenomena, to get more of it. Many complex phenomena are bigger than a method can accomplish. So we're seeking broader and deeper portraits of major study constructs as different methods measure different facets of the same construct. And in our example of children experiencing homelessness and what happens to schooling, so another construct of importance is the role of school in a family's homeless crisis. Does school serve some kind of important anchor for children or not? We could mix at the level of methodology and method to better understand this role or place of schooling in a homeless crisis. So we could mix surveys of parents, children, and homeless service staff with many case studies of selected families. third purpose for mixing that arose in our study was that of development. The development seeks more contextual and relevant findings as the results from one method inform the development of another. For example, in our context, to address questions regarding how schooling patterns differ for different families that are homeless for different reasons, you could use the results of surveys or case records to purposely select diverse samples of families for further interviews, using the results of one method to inform the other. The fourth purpose that arose was that of initiation. Initiation purposely attends to or capitalizes on paradoxes or contradictions in the findings from different methods toward deeper and more generative results. For example, the existing literature on homelessness is likely missing some key dimensions that are related to school and of importance to homeless families. We could mix at all levels, method, methodology, and paradigm, to invoke some fresh insight into the educational dimensions of the homeless experience for the children and youth. We could mix constructivist narrative elicitation of stories with a more structured quantitative assessment of possible knowledge and skill gained during the homeless crisis. And the fifth and final purpose, which has kind of fallen out of favor at this time, is that you can extend the reach of a study by including a method or methodology that's not part of the major design or the major framework. That is the notion of expansion. So you can extend the reach of the study as different methods assess different phenomena. And in our example, an analysis of school data on student academic and behavioral performance, especially during the homeless crisis, is added to an otherwise experiential study of the place of schooling within the phenomenon of homelessness. The two most common purposes among these five are complementarity, where we're using different methods or methodologies to get more of a complex phenomena than we can with one method, and development, where we're using the results of one method to develop another, the results of some observations to develop a survey. The one that has lost some luster is this expansion. It's still used, but it's not commonly included as a mixed methods phenomena, precisely because the reach of the study has become quite routine. As I illustrated, I think that mixing is most usefully and generatively targeted around a key construct or a key question. Just saying that we're doing a mix of methods without focusing that mix around something makes the study much harder to actually implement and to actually analyze the data toward a convergence or a divergence of results. More importantly, I think thoughtfulness and clarity about the purposes for mixing methods in your study, what are you trying to accomplish with a mix of methods, importantly supports the development of a strong, thoughtful, and well-designed mixed method study. I'm going to go on to design. Any of you who have any experience with the mixed methods literature is likely know that design is the busiest place of development. There's more frameworks for design than there are frameworks for almost anything else. Our original review with my two graduate students of the 57 mixed methods studies and evaluation yielded 4 major dimensions of mixed methods design. All other formulations of what counts in mixed methods design use very similar dimensions. So this is a common set of parameters of mixed methods design that you need to think through as you're deciding to implement this methodology. The labels are different, but the concepts are the same. So The phenomena being assessed. Are the different methods measuring the same or different phenomena? Again, complementarity purpose would say we're measuring the same phenomena but different aspects of it. An expansion purpose, we're using different methods to measure different phenomena. It's a design dimension. Weighting of the methods. Is there a major method, major methodology, and a secondary method, or are these to be of equal weight and voice in the study? Timing of the methods or methodologies or paradigms. Are these to be implemented at the same time or in sequence? You can kind of begin to see links to purpose. If you're doing a development purpose, one needs to be implemented and you use those results to develop another. So it's kind of a logical. And timing of the mixing. Does the mixing happen during the process of the study, or does it happen at the end when one is making inferences? So I believe that more important than design dimensions are the purposes, because design dimensions follow from purpose. And I say this only because much of the mixed methods literature is filled with designs without considering what are we trying to accomplish with this design. To me, starting with purpose is much more helpful, just practically helpful, than it is to start with a design. So I don't think one defensively initiates a mixed method study by saying something like, I want to do a sequential confirmatory design. That's a type of design that's out there in the literature. One starts by saying something like, in this study, I want to get a good understanding of how healthy and strong peer relationships contribute to the social development of a child with mild learning disabilities. It's a substantive desire that you have. You're trying to pose a question, and then you go to design. This construct of the quality of peer interactions would then be a good candidate for a mixed method study. Carlos, yo voy a la página próxima. Un poquito antes de punto número 4. So this is my main point of this section, that purposes steer design dimensions, and then I'm going to, this is my main message. Okay, un poco antes de punto 4. Okay, main message. The most important points are this. A good mixed methods study mixes with intention and purpose. Mixed methods design theory supports that intention and purpose. I say this over and over because too many mixed method studies start with design. It's like saying, I'm going to do a survey study, or I'm going to do an experiment, or I'm going to do a case study before you've articulated what you're studying and why you're studying it. That's where we start. What am I going to study? What am I hoping to learn? And then what kind of design makes sense? If a mixed methods approach makes sense, you say, what am I hoping to accomplish with that mix of methods? And then you go to design. So that's my last lecture on that. Now we're going to mixed methods data analysis. This is actually wonderfully fun. Any creative people in the audience may wish to experiment with this. There's lots of ample room in the community for experimentation with how do you actually analyze different sets of data together. It's a work in progress, integrative data analysis. There are many bookshelves, government file cabinets, digital library collections of creative and thoughtful mixed methods analysis that were invented by social inquirers from many fields out of necessity. The field still lacks a widely applicable conceptual framework or theory for the analytic phase of mixing methods, especially for integrative studies where the mixing happens during the course of the study, not just at the stage of inference. There's a new book on this topic by Patricia Baisley, an Australian. She collected examples of integrative data analysis from lots of mixed method studies and organized them into a set of 8 or 9 descriptive chapters. We still don't have a theory of integrative analysis, but we have many examples of interesting and relevant strategies that we can all make use of. I have also, estoy en página 13, empieza quite a bit, porque estoy skipping parte. Quite a bit less extensively than Patricia, her eight chapters of integrative data analysis strategies. I have collected some good examples that I think and just generated a small matrix of analytic strategies for integrating numbers and words or different types of data in the same analysis. Each row constitutes a type of analysis. Data transformation enabling joint analysis is something you would do at the descriptive phase of analysis. The middle part, data comparison and correlation, is something you do in the middle. Is there a pattern of variables or constructs that co-occur, that go together? And then there are interesting major analyses towards the end of a study that do lead directly to conclusions and inferences. These categories represent analyses of increasing complexity. Good ideas for mixed methods data analysis come from thoughtful and creative practitioners. And I think for now, it's important to follow their lead and share generative results that we have of our own. I'd like to share one example, so this becomes a little more concrete. This is the reference for this example. Eunice Jang was a graduate student of ours at the University of Illinois. I chose this example because I think it's very creative and thoughtful. The study that was done focused on a multidimensional understanding of school success for schools that serve low-income children, immigrant children, and their families in Ontario, Canada. The sample had 20 of these schools that had demonstrated substantial academic success over the last 3 years in serving this population. The intent of the study was to develop a contextually grounded, multidimensional understanding of factors and practices associated with this academic success. Again, academic success for schools that serve low-income immigrant families and children. The design of this study, the purpose of the mixing was for complementarity. So we're using more than one methodology to understand complex phenomena. There were 20 schools purposefully selected, and there were 2 main methods used. There were surveys and interviews conducted with teachers and principals, and group interviews with students and parents. The overall mixed methods purpose of this mix of methods was complementarity. Let's get a richer portrait of what's going on with student academic success. The author said, with this design, the general description of school improvement from the survey was enriched, elaborated, and clarified with contextually specific accounts of school success from interviews involving multiple perspectives. That's a classic statement of complementarity. The researchers in this study analyzed each data set on its own, generated some descriptive findings, and shared these with schools for discussion and feedback. Then they went back to their data and re-engaged in several creative and generative mixed data analysis to better ascertain patterns in the data and especially connections across the survey and interviews. How can we connect those 2 data sets? Recall, the surveys were completed by teachers and principals, and the group interviews were conducted with children and parents. So the mixed methods agenda here is connect what teachers and principals said with what parents and children said about schooling and homelessness. Here's one of their analyses. They developed what they called blended themes. From the original analysis, the survey had yielded 9 factors, and the interview had 11 themes. So they integrated the data. They developed what they called blended themes. They took the scales from the survey. No, they took the themes from the interview and rescaled the survey. The survey had 11 themes. They took those 11 themes, brought it over to the survey items, and resorted the items into the themes from the interview. So it's the structure of meaning, the interviews with the parents and children, they brought that over to the survey data and rescaled the survey. 3 interview themes were not present in the survey items, and some of they assigned the 63 items to one of the remaining 8 themes. They used the structure of meaning from the interview to rescale the survey. And then they reanalyzed this survey data. The new blended scale showed more variation than the original survey scales. And one example, they looked at schools that were outliers on the blended themes. They identified schools that had a very high mean score and a very low mean score on these blended themes. They went back to the qualitative data to try to make interpretive sense out of the narratives that they'd accomplished. And they wrote case profiles by theme to understand the contextual meanings of high and low schools for that theme. Here's an example for the parent involvement theme. Again, the rescaled survey data from themes from the interviews. I won't read all those, but the high school was doing a lot of things involved in getting parents connected with the school and using the resources of the school. And these are some examples of the kinds of things they were doing to maintain parent connection and involvement during this homeless crisis. And then a low school had a similar demographics, but were preoccupied with other characteristics, other concerns in that school, in this case, the school safety. It's not that they didn't care about parent involvement, they had other concerns at this time. Okay. Last component of this description of mixed methods work. When writing up the process and the results of a social inquiry study, voice matters. Guidelines for voice come from the assumptive framework or the paradigm of that study. But in mixed methods work, we can have more than one set of assumptions and traditions about voice, and thus the language to be used in writing it up. It can be hard to honor more than one tradition in the write-up of a study with a mix of methods. One response to this challenge is to shift to a completely different way of writing, borrowing from the literary arts. Known in the social science literature as alternative ways of representation, I will illustrate one such representation. This was written as a summary of this presentation regarding the central importance of purposeful planning and thoughtful intention in designing a mixed method study. That's the point of this story. This representation represents this core idea through the literary genre of fables or stories. So I'm using a story to make the main point I'm trying to make in this presentation, which is the importance of carefully planning and thoughtfully developing your mixed method study. The fable. Quandaries of motion. One fine morning in early autumn, when the sun was shining brightly, but a briskness in the air lingered from the overnight coolness, Belinda, The pot-bellied pig took a saunter through her neighborhood. Being the social creature that she was, and a bit of a busybody, even as Belinda would admit, Belinda wished to greet her many friends, join them in a cup of tea with fresh honey from the bees, of course, and catch up on the latest news and gossip. She first chanced upon Harry Hamster, who was busy running in his wheel. "Good day, Harry. How are you this fine autumn morning?" queried Belinda. "I'm fine, Belinda," responded Harry, as he continued to run and spin in his wheel. "Would you like to have a cup of tea with me?" asked Belinda. "Well, yes," answered Harry, "but it's quite hard to drink tea while running in my wheel." "So perhaps you could take a tea break," suggested Belinda. "After all, you are just spinning a wheel, not really going or getting anywhere." "Humph," responded Harry. "Hamsters spin wheel. It's what we do, not about getting somewhere." Belinda thought for a moment about continuing this discussion, but then thought better of it, and cheerfully said, "Well, I've enjoyed chatting with you, Harry, and I hope your wheel spinning continues to be enjoyable for you." Harry started in. "Hamsters spin wheels. It's what we do. It's not about enjoying..." But Belinda moved on down the path. Belinda next encountered Raquel Rat, who was, you guessed it, busy finding her way through a maze. "Good morning, Raquel," beamed Belinda with a big smile. "How would you like to join me in a cup of tea with fresh honey from the bees?" Raquel peeked over the wall of the maze, gave Belinda a belligerent stare, and said, "Hey, girlie, can't you see that I'm busy here? Gotta find my way through this maze. Don't have time for such frivolities as tea with bee honey." Belinda responded, "But Raquel, what's at the end of the maze? Why is it so important to find your way through?" Raquel's stare went from belligerent to pugnaciously confrontational, and her voice became steely and very measured, and she said, "Finding our way through the maze is what rats do. It's not about getting something at the end." Belinda, being a fast learner, hustled her way on down the path. A bit later on, after Belinda had regained her early morning equilibrium and good spirits, she came upon Candace, the Canadian goose, who appeared to be just hanging out, as geese are wont to do. Belinda cheerfully greeted her friend. "Good day, Candace. You're looking fine this morning. Would you like to join me in a cup of tea made delicious with fresh honey from the bees?" Candace responded with a look of puzzlement and confusion. She said, Tea and bee honey? Well, not sure. I'm not sure how this will fit in our pre-migration preparations. The family is soon off to Florida for the winter. You recall that we have a cabana there. And I don't know if tea is part of the preparations or not. I'm getting a bit forgetful at my age." Belinda kindly responded with, "Oh, that's okay, Candace. We don't have to have tea. It's just nice to see you." Candace looked relieved. Belinda continued gently with a question. "So, Candace, why does your family go to Florida each winter? What do you do down there?" Candace replied, "Well, we do the same things as we do here. Eat, walk around, visit friends." Belinda persisted. "So why can't you do these things here? Why do you fly all the way to Florida?" And Candace responded, "Well, it's just what Canadian geese do, I guess." Having heard this, "It's just what we do" before on this autumn morning, Belinda said a hurried, over-the-shoulder, "Have a good trip" to Candace, and then scurried on down the path. After having her own cup of tea with fresh bee honey and regaining her equilibrium, Belinda continued on her morning walk. After a short interval, Belinda encountered Jill, a working guide dog for a blind person named Mary. Mary was inside her house having tea with a friend, complete with fresh bee honey, of course, so Jill was on break. Belinda sat down next to Jill in the warm autumn sun and said, Jill, what is it that guide dogs do? I really don't know, and I'm curious and interested. Jill responded calmly and competently. Guide dogs like myself assist humans who can't see to accomplish the tasks they need to do in daily life that require sight. One main example of these tasks is navigation, or getting from one spot to another. Belinda excitedly interrupted her friend. So, Jill, you do things with an intentional purpose in mind. Your activities are intentional and purposeful. You're expecting particular consequences from your actions. Yes, exactly, responded Jill. Our work is purposeful and consequential. Belinda beamed with satisfaction at hearing these words from Jill. This fable is intended to reinforce the central message of the first part of my presentation, that of the importance of careful, intentional, and planful attentions to the options that exist in planning and designing a mixed method study. Relying on old habits or the usual customs or the norms of your field are not likely the strategy that will generate a strong mixed method study for that particular context. I'm going to move to part 2, which is much shorter, but I would like to pause and just see if there's any burning questions or comments. I've given a description of the current mixed methods fields with my little story underscoring the importance of purpose and intentionality in thinking about designing a mixed method study. So if there are comments, criticisms, questions on this kind of portrait of mixed methods at this time, before I raise some questions myself about it, I'd be happy to take them.
Yo tengo... Bueno, yo sí que tengo una cuestión que plantear por aclarar, sobre todo porque hay mucho debate.
Okay, you can translate.
I can't? No, I...
Do you prefer this?
It doesn't matter.
¿Cómo?
Que yo puedo traducir.
Bueno,
ella dice,
no,
bueno, pues entonces no pongo el...
el micro. No, es una cuestión relacionada... Es una cuestión relacionada con el planteamiento de las preguntas de investigación. Porque siempre hay una cuestión concreta que se refiere a cuando hacemos métodos mixtos, tenemos que seleccionar. La cuestión es seleccionar una pregunta o cada método tiene su pregunta y tenemos que hacerlas converger, o tenemos que elaborar dos preguntas que al final ayuden a contestar una tercera. Ese debate siempre es muy complejo.
It's about the question. We have to think about one research question, or each method has one research question, or independently, or the two research questions have to converse with the third one.
Para mí, no hablo español bastante bien para contestar en español. For me, it's better to mix around constructs. What are we studying? Children's learning, the benefits of a school program for homeless children in the midst of a crisis, rather than questions. You can write different questions for different methods. I think mixing is harder to do when you do that. I think mixing is more rewarding and beneficial if we mix around the most important constructs or questions we are asking.
La segunda pregunta está relacionada con una cosa que también cuando leemos sobre métodos mixtos es muy habitual. Las tipologías de diseño. The typology of design.
Typologies of design, okay.
Necesitamos hacer un acuerdo en la comunidad científica para utilizar una misma tipología. Hay diferentes tipologías, Hesselweber, Criswell, hay mucha gente que ha hecho tipologías. O simplemente el sentido del estudio debería de ser lo suficientemente potente para que el diseño no fuera tan importante. Para compartir, quiero decir.
Some members of the mixed methods community would very much like agreement on their typology. So that happens, that exists. We're academics. But I actually think many typologies share the same dimensions that I mentioned. They're about what gets mixed at what level. And I don't think we need complete agreement by any means. And we have more creativity in this room than the mixed methods community may have elsewhere. So I think the field remains very open to creative thoughts, to ideas, to anybody here who may have a particular design or a way of thinking about mixing methods that is not represented out there. So I certainly don't think we need closure or agreement on design dimensions, although they're very common across typologies. I think we need to keep things open and have space for creative youngsters, creative ideas, people who work in different places to put their own stamp on mixing methods. Okay? Yeah?
¿Alguna cuestión más? I would like to. Different methods usually have different languages, and when we work together, in your experience, what about the difficulties on not doing agreement but sharing meaning with different language, different practice, and different experience?
That's a very good point. I think mixed methods is, if you mix, especially at all levels, the method, methodology, and paradigms or assumptions, you're mixing language, history, values, culture, all kinds of things. The team needs to come together with an agreement of this is not a contest. This is a cooperation. We both care about this phenomenon. We care about the well-being of children in homeless families at school and so forth. We care about that. So it's not a battle about who has the better way of thinking about this. We have to share each other's language and be respectful of how you think about this and how I think about this. So it is a challenge. But a mixed method study is best done with a group who come together from different methodological standpoints and experiences but they come together with respect. So that would be my view. Okay, seguimos? Okay. So this is shorter, but what I've tried to do is demystify, say here's what mixed methods is about, here's the kinds of conversations we have, and now I'd like to raise some challenges about what I just said. So I will go straight to the challenges número uno, Carlos. Can a methodology like mixing methods be taken seriously in the absence of serious theories about mixing methods? Well-accepted methodologies have the supportive weight of philosophy, of an empirically supported methodological theories like statistics and inductive qualitative data analysis. What's the status of methodological theory for mixed methods inquiry? Question 2. How do we warrant the results of a mixed method study? Warrants for empirical results rely on an accepted set of methodological criteria like validity or contextual meaningfulness or actionable social change. When mixing, especially at the methodological and philosophical levels, what set of criteria or what other criteria can and should we use? And question 3, is it really possible to mix at the paradigm philosophical level, given that assumptions of different paradigms can be and commonly are considered incommensurable? You can't simultaneously believe that the world is round and the world is flat. Acknowledging that different approaches to social inquiry carry with them and advance certain values, how does the social inquirer doing a mixed method study embrace value differences? Certainly between paradigms, but also between methodologies and even methods. This final section will briefly address each of these important but troublesome questions in ways that rather transparently convey my own vision for mixing methods and why I remain an active, even passionate advocate of this way of thinking about our work as social scientists. So what is the status of methodological theory for mixed methods inquiry? How much purchase or how much respect and place in the world of social science can this approach to social inquiry have, since we don't really have a theory? I think the current status, even without a theory, is quite robust. The current status of mixed methods work, full of energy and creativity, open spaces for all of you to participate and contribute. Even though we lack a single theory that's called mixed methods social inquiry. There are several families of theory, which I will point to now, that are inhabitants of the mixed methods literature. The first one I call the just do it theory. That's the Nike swoosh. Nike says just do it. This family may actually be an atheoretical family. If you just do it, you don't necessarily need a theory to justify what you're doing. The modal form of planning and implementing a mixed method study for members of this family is to rely on experience, common sense, contextual responsiveness, and sometimes a concept or two from mixed methods theory literature. Because I continue to believe that practice is much more difficult and challenging than theory in methodology and every other part of life, practicing it is much harder than theorizing about it. This relatively atheoretical stance, the just do it family, regarding the character and role of theory for mixed methods social inquiry, I think remains an important one. Why do we need a theory anyway? In addition, I would like to quote two past methodologists in the United States who offered excellent practical guidance for newly minted qualitative inquiry. These are the authors of this book, Qualitative Data Analysis, and the authors are named Matthew Miles and Michael Huberman. They once famously said, in support of social inquirers who went about their work primarily guided by their own practical, quiet competence, said, "All this philosophical mumbo-jumbo doesn't get the work done." Mumbo-jumbo is this and that. So all this philosophizing doesn't get the work done. So that's family number one. Maybe we don't need all this philosophizing. Maybe we just need to do our work. The second family of mixed methods theory and theorists is perhaps the largest. Members of this family provide specific practical guidance for mixed methods practitioners regarding purposes, especially designs. That's a very popular topic in mixed methods inquiry. Mixed data analysis, criteria for judging quality, and more. Often this guidance is presented in the form of typologies or lists. The 4 mixed methods design characteristics I shared in the first part are an example of this family. Here's what you need to consider when designing a mixed methods study: focus, timing, power, and when do you mix. This, I think, is the most common form of theorizing today in mixed methods. The third family, think about the big picture. I might be a member of this family. They think about philosophy, paradigms, about grand theories of methodology, about how and where mixed methods theory and practice fit within the grand theory, and also about how mixed methods can actually contribute to the big picture. What does mixed methods accomplish that other traditions of social science do not? This busy landscape of educational diversity. Some members of this family have advanced alternative paradigms, philosophical sets of assumptions for mixed methods social inquiry. By alternative, I mean something that that goes beyond or is not our familiar post-positivist quantitative methodology and constructivist qualitative methodology. Among the paradigms that are advanced for mixed methods include those on the screen: American pragmatism, critical realism, dialectical pluralism, feminism, and transformation. And I know what some of these are, but not all of them. They have been advanced in the mixed methods theoretical literature as ways we can anchor our work in important philosophical assumptions. And the fourth family directly engage the politics and values of social inquiry. They blend particular political value stances with the practical implementation of a mixed method study. Again, within the mixed methods conversation, transformation and feminism have been popular socio-political stances for this fourth family. Transformation seeks socio-political empowerment of individuals and groups who are least well off economically, and feminism, of course, advances the broad well-being of women and girls in the study at hand. So have these 4, and likely other families coming along, we have a plenitude of pathways we can take to develop a sensible and defensible plan for our mixing of methods, to ground our work in clear rationales, to maximize the benefits of a mixed methods approach to social inquiry. At the same time, we lack a conceptual framework that we can all share, a theory of mixed methods, as it were. So while we can enjoy a rich and generative buffet of creative ideas and worthy maxims, there still is lacking a core set of common beliefs. So the second question was, how do we warrant the results from a mixed method study? How do we say this is defensible? This is based on the important dimensions that we have generated. It's important to note first that data quality and often descriptive results in a mixed method study are warranted by the traditional quality criteria of that tradition. So if we're doing a survey, we would look at standard errors of measurement, and we would look at indices indicating the reliability and validity of the inferences that we got. So we would use, just for direct inferences, we would use the criteria of that tradition. There's also, in keeping with the robust character of development within the mixed methods community, and I encourage you again all to contribute. It's not a closed community. There's plenty of spaces for good ideas. There has been some work on quality criteria and warrants that are specific to mixed methods results and conclusions. I think maybe the most comprehensive of these is work by Alicia O'Caffane, who has generated a set of criteria that we can use for judging the quality of our work. She proposes criteria for 8 phases of social inquiry, and this slide shares some snippets from her framework. It's quite a comprehensive framework of quality criteria for warranting the work that we do and the conclusions that we get. So I think this remains a challenge, and I would argue that it will remain a challenge for the foreseeable future, but there are some good and defensible ideas in the mixed methods literature for nearly all the components of a respectable social science methodology. Not unlike quality criteria for qualitative inquiry, there's a substantial plurality of these ideas in the mixed methods literature rather than just 1 or 2 defensible strategies. And now to my final question. Tasha Corey and Ted Lee have also proposed some quality criteria, and these include their two of their most general ones. So the third question I posed is, can you actually mix at a paradigmatic level, given that the assumptions and values of different paradigms can be and are commonly considered incommensurable? You can't simultaneously believe that the social world is real, it exists independent of our knowing it, and that the social world is constructed. It's generated as we move through the world in our own ways. Relatedly, acknowledging that different approaches to social inquiry carry along with them, and thus advance certain values, how does the social inquirer doing a mixed method study avoid value clashes and dissonance? Values that don't agree one with one another, certainly among paradigms, but also between methods and methodologies. My response to this final challenge is to recognize the distinctive potential of mixed method social inquiry to engage respectfully, dialogically, and constructively with different, even opposing values, assumptions, and stances in our work. My argument will have 3 main points. Values are an inherent strand of the philosophical, methodological, and theoretical frameworks we intentionally choose, or perhaps less intentionally and more out of habit, adopt for our inquiry practice. Our work as social inquirers is inherently imbued with values, if not saturated with values, and we are responsible for what values get advanced in our work. Yet too rarely we even acknowledge these values as part of our inquiry designs or reports. As one example, a traditional post-positivist paradigm and accompanying quantitative methodology advances and thereby conveys a valuing of generalizable causal knowledge. We want to know what causes what, and we want to know how generalizable it is, as well as objectivity and rigorous methodology. In my field of educational program evaluation, post-positivist evaluations typically address the questions of policymakers, and so well serve their interests and values, but they do not address the interests and values of other stakeholders in that setting. The people who've designed the program, the people who've implemented the program, and the people who are participants in the program. As another example, the key questions being asked in an educational study motivated by a constructivist qualitative paradigm are likely to be ones about the meaningfulness of the learning that's happening to the students and the teacher alike, in particular contexts in which the program is being implemented. The values advanced in this kind of study emphasize the importance of context, of individuality, of meaningful learning, and of education as a process. And to use a third example with a critical social paradigm, this study would address and would advance particular values related to structural equity, fairness, and social justice. Just imagine what a thoughtful and respectful conversation among these three standpoints, postpositivism, constructivism, and critical social theory, would look like, and what benefits might be generated by such a conversation. So, point one, whether we like it or not, we advance certain values in our inquiry process. Point number two, the more levels we mix, the more value diversity there can be in a mixed method study. Mixing at more levels invites broader and deeper ways of knowing and more varied standpoints of valuing into the same study. The value diversity and multiplicity are more apparent if we mix methods, methodologies, and paradigms or frameworks. They're more apparent. This value diversity becomes more apparent. For example, a study that mixed at all levels, method, methodology, and paradigm, would invoke multiple layers of value diversity. The study might include a stance that important knowledge about the social world is objective knowledge about causality. That's what postpositivists do. The study might also include a stance that important knowledge about the social world foregrounds critique of structural inequities about the social world that exist in the context being studied. This is the job of critical social science. Let's look at the structures and the inequities that exist in them. Carlos, yo voy a página 28, punto número 3. ¿Ya? And point 3 for this second idea about value diversity. A mixed methods approach to social research and evaluation offers a relatively unique opportunity for dialogic values engagement, for intentional, thoughtful, and planful respect engagement with value diversity. Not battling, not saying my way is better than your way, but let's listen to one another. Let's engage in respectful conversation with how you are making sense and how you are making sense with this phenomenon. So beyond the promise of better understanding, mixing methods offers a methodological standpoint in which methodology is not just a technical enterprise, but rather a space where difference and respectful dialogue about difference are actively invited and engaged. Finally. In the years since my days of being a newly minted PhD, the many, many years, with only an instrumental interest in methods, I've developed a form of methodological mindfulness. I've come to recognize that method matters too. In fact, it actually determines to a significant degree what is learned in an evaluation or research study. I've learned that method is not a neutral player in social research and evaluation, but rather it privileges particular questions, theoretical perspectives, political stances, and values. That all methods are limited to a particular worldview, muffling, if not silencing, all others. No single method can capture the immense complexity that constitutes meaningfulness and effectiveness of educational or social interventions, as experienced by diverse learners and teachers in endlessly varied educational places and times, and other contexts in which all of you do your work. And that we as social inquirers researchers and evaluators alike, are responsible for the methods choices that we make. Within this framework, though not necessarily with all mixed methods framework, a mixed methods approach to social inquiry is best envisioned as a dialogue across differences of standpoint, knowledge, and values, enacted with genuine acceptance of other ways of seeing and knowing, with a purposeful engagement with diversity and difference. A mixed methods approach to social inquiry also awakens and underscores the importance of vision, of what you are hoping to accomplish with your research, beyond contributions to theory and knowledge accumulation, and beyond productive translations to practice. A mixed methods approach to social inquiry calls on our souls and our conscience, and invites each of us to position our scholarship in service of the well-being of all peoples. And finally, a mixed methods approach to social inquiry evokes a commitment to social justice and equity, both in the structures of our societies and in the individual pathways of our individual lives. Muchas gracias.
Tenemos unos minutos para debatir, para plantear cuestiones, hacer observaciones. Three. ¿Alguien quiere empezar? Martín.
Bueno, muchas gracias en primer lugar por esta conferencia que me parece interesante. Me parece interesante por una razón. Veo que los métodos mixtos, creo entender, podría constituir un ambicioso deseo de responder a la complejidad, a la incertidumbre que en definitiva nos rige en este momento, ¿no? Yo creo que en todos los momentos de la humanidad, pero en este siglo XXI yo creo que aún tenemos más dudas que las que había en el siglo I. Entonces, el intentar responder a eso, a través de un diálogo, en definitiva, entre un método y otro método, pues me parece un ideal interesante y muy ambicioso y muy pertinente. Ahora bien, también veo la dificultad, no precisamente en la mixtura de técnicas, cuestionario, entrevista, por ejemplo, eso me parece bastante salvable, pero llegar a una mixtura de paradigmas ya lo veo más difícil. En ese sentido, preguntaría a la ponente si realmente hay estudios en ese sentido, ya no solamente en sentido investigativo, metodológico, sino filosófico. Si realmente hay alguna corriente o algunos autores que intenten unir el positivismo, por ejemplo, con la teoría crítica. ¿Hay eso? Si eso existiera y llegáramos a una unificación en ese ambiente, pues me parecería muy interesante. De lo contrario, lo veo difícil. Veo fácil la mixtura técnica, de técnicas, pero no tanto la mixtura de paradigmas, ideología, filosofía, porque es muy distinto, ¿no? Hay gente que piensa que la justicia es X y otros dicen la misma palabra justicia y entienden Z.
Wonderful question. I wish I could respond very positively, very affirmatively to your question. I think most mixed method studies do not mix at a paradigm level. They mix at a method, sometimes methodology. But most do not endeavor to mix assumptions, stances, values. And I think it's also extremely hard for one person to do that mix at the philosophical level. I consider myself, I'm located in a particular set of philosophical assumptions. I can appreciate the others, but I can't mix them fairly. So mixing at that level requires a team and requires a set of norms and values within the team that we respect these different positions and the values that come with them. So it is done. There are cases where people, teams usually, work very hard at communicating respectfully with one another about their perspectives and what they've learned from their methods. So it can be done. It ends up being more dialogic, and the results are less clear because they represent different viewpoints. But I agree with you that there's a socio-political dimension to mixing methods that I would love it if it could be realized, but I think it's rare. It doesn't happen very often. So thank you for your question.
Sí, me dice Barto que quien vaya a hablar que se presente y diga de dónde es para también ubicarnos.
Hola, buenas tardes. Soy Juan Carlos Tojar, de la Universidad de Málaga. Jennifer, muchas gracias por tu conferencia. La verdad es que muy interesante y he tomado muchas notas, ¿verdad? De cosas que has dicho. Me gustaría preguntarte, casi respondes un poco a la inquietud que tengo. Bueno, no es una inquietud, pero sí me gustaría que me dieras alguna clave para responder a investigadores que pueden estar tanto en el lado cuantitativo como en el lado cualitativo, que dicen que los métodos mixtos en realidad no existen, que no tienen teoría, lo has dicho tú, el paradigma está quizá en construcción, pero eso se podría decir desde un lado y también desde otro, ¿no? Y ¿qué les dirías tú, no? Quizás, no sé, apoyándonos en toda la gente que escribe sobre métodos mixtos, pero podría decir, no, yo soy cuantitativo, pero no soy un cuantitativo ingenuo. Y lógicamente incluyo algunas técnicas cualitativas también de vez en cuando. Lo mismo que te puede decir alguien que investiga de manera cualitativa, que dice, soy un cualitativo pero no soy ingenuo, y claro, si tengo que utilizar un cuestionario lo utilizo. ¿Qué le dirías a estas personas para decirles, no, estos existen a pesar de los problemas que tenemos en la actualidad todavía? Gracias.
These are excellent questions. I wish I had good answers for them. Again, within the mixed methods literature, there have been particular paradigms advanced, one of which, perhaps the most popular one that has been advanced, is American pragmatism, which comes mainly from John Dewey, the philosopher John Dewey, who always had a both realist and constructivist strand to his philosophy. So I think there are possibilities. I think a critical stance, which is less concerned about particular philosophical assumptions and more concerned about the inequities that exist in the context we study has also been advanced as a framework that can be used. For me, I mean, I'm partly at the end of my career, but I also think this kind of dialogic possibility between constructivists and post-positivists, or between feminists and post-positivists, can be a very, very valued feature of a mixed method study. It has to be established with norms of respect. You can't have a respectful conversation if the norms of respect are not there. But I'm less concerned about finding one paradigm for mixed methods than I am about continuing conversations across difference. Mixed methods heightens difference. And why can't we think about that as an opportunity for learning, all of us, and for respectful conversation? So I don't have a great answer to your question, except there is American pragmatism, and some critical stances have been advanced as paradigms that could fit mixed methods. I see it more dialogically, but we all have to come to the table with the same framework. So thank you for your comment.
¿Alguna cuestión más? ¿Sí?
Hola, buenas tardes. Soy Marian Fernández de la Universidad de Vigo. Muchísimas gracias por las aportaciones que nos ha hecho esta tarde. Y simplemente quería hacerle una cuestión, porque ahora en la respuesta que le ha dado al compañero dice que está al final de su carrera o sea, de su camino en el ámbito profesional. Una lástima. Pero quería preguntarle si desde que conoció los métodos mixtos y ha tenido estos problemas a la hora de defenderse desde el punto de vista del paradigma o desde el punto de vista de la interacción metodológica, ha dejado de utilizarlos. El hecho de que no creyeran en que hay un paradigma o una teoría específica le ha impedido a usted desarrollar trabajos a través del uso de los métodos mixtos. Gracias.
I do not think it's possible to do a social science study without a set of assumptions about what we're studying. It's just not possible, whether we're aware of them or not. And I was not aware of anything philosophical for a good 10 years of my career. I didn't study, nobody talked about paradigms. But so we all have a set of assumptions about the nature of the phenomena that we're studying. You cannot be a social scientist without those assumptions, whether you're aware of them or not. So I think the mixed methods approach underscores that. It makes it more evident that we are approaching our work as social scientists with a set of assumptions about the phenomena that we are studying and the context and so forth. I think the mixed methods conversation has drawn attention to that fact, that we social scientists approach our work with a set of assumptions about what we're studying. So I think the mixed methods conversation has made that more apparent as we get interested in mixed methods. And I'm not, it has nothing to do with where I am in my career, but I also think that we don't need to find a mixed methods paradigm. I mean, we could, but we don't have to. We have many paradigms available to us, and we can include them in the same study. And I think that's actually the richest kind of mixed methods study. So I wouldn't encourage people to find the mixed methods paradigm, although, again, ideas like American pragmatism have been suggested. I think we don't really need it. We have plenty of paradigms. and we can use them or mix at a different level within a paradigm, and go from there. Thank you for these excellent questions.
I would like to talk about transdisciplinarity. Also, should I?
Yeah, you talk in Spanish.
Okay.
Carlos will help me.
Tenía anotado, tenía anotado para preguntarte sobre transdisciplinariedad, o sea, la investigación transdisciplinar, y enlazando un poco con esa dificultad o reconocimiento de los métodos mixtos. Me parece interesante, a partir de vuestras dos últimas intervenciones, cómo trabajando en equipos transdisciplinares parece que es más fácil hablar de diferentes paradigmas y diferentes métodos, y como que se da por hecho que tenemos lo que yo decía antes de diferentes lenguajes, diferentes métodos, y por lo menos desde mi experiencia tendemos a escuchar más que cuando estamos en un equipo solo de educadores, educadoras o de psicólogos y psicólogas en mi caso. O sea, que somos más, como que nos cuesta más aceptar la diferencia dentro de nuestra propia área que trabajando en equipos transdisciplinares. Y me gustaría preguntar por la experiencia de Jennifer.
I think it's a strong parallel to mixed methods, because I have not done a whole lot of interdisciplinary work. I'm an educational program evaluator, so most of my work has been within the field of education, but upon occasion I've had the delight to work with sociologists or psychologists even. So I think there's a good parallel there, that disciplines also have a set of worldviews, or maybe within a discipline there's a variety of worldviews about the nature of the phenomena that we study. I mean, as an educator, many of you are, we study learning. Learning is an incredibly complex phenomena, and we bring theories and perspectives and understandings to what learning actually is that are supported by disciplinary traditions. In education, there would be quite a few of those disciplinary traditions. So I think it's a good parallel. Interdisciplinary work should be, at its best, more productive, more interesting, more insightful, more generative than working within the single discipline that many of us are carried. I don't know if the assumptions across disciplines would be all that different from one another or more similar. But I think it's quite the interdisciplinarity and working across philosophical traditions would have a lot of parallels. And again, I would think to do that productively and meaningfully, you'd need to approach that with a sense of partnership, not battling, not to see who's best or who's right, but let's partner in this endeavor to understand an important phenomenon for fully. So I like the parallel. Thank you, Fatima.
Thank you.
Sí, Antonio Fraile de la Universidad de Valladolid. Hasta ahora, lo que se ha ido abordando en esta sesión ha tenido un enfoque puramente de investigación. Pero a mí me gustaría preguntar, ya que Jennifer también has comentado que tu trabajo ha estado enfocado hacia la evaluación de programas, desde que un ámbito didáctico, ya que somos la mayoría de educadores que nos movemos en el ámbito de la enseñanza, esta visión mixta o estos enfoques mixtos también pueden ser trasladables o transferibles al ámbito de la evaluación del aprendizaje. ¿Cuál es la experiencia o si hay profesores o investigadores que están trasladando también ese enfoque a un ámbito más didáctico, no solamente de la investigación social?
no entiendo la cuestión perfectamente. ¿Puede ayudarme?
Yeah.
Ella.
He was asking about your evaluation
Work.
work. So, about mixed methods applying to the evaluation, the learning evaluation, or the knowledge evaluation into the teaching. So, if you have experience using mixed methods on teaching also, the evaluation of students and the evaluation of
mixing methods.
Didactics.
Mixing methods as an instructor.
Yeah.
Mixing methods in
To evaluate our
different
students.
kinds of pedagogy. Different kinds.
In
different
our disciplines, in our subject, how to use, if you have experience, using mixed methods to evaluate our students, or to mixing methods in
different types of methods to evaluate how students.
Our students' performance, our students' learning.
Una pregunta muy buena. Oh, wait, English. I think so. I think I have experience doing that. I have for quite a few years encouraged students in my classes, and I've always taught graduate students, master's and PhD students, so these are adults. I've encouraged them to think about a variety of ways to represent to me what they've learned. So the traditional way would be a paper with sections and intellectual discussion and referencing the right authors and all of that. Another way could be a poem. So writing up what I've learned in this class about method in a poem, or not a novel, but a short story. There's a very good fit of this notion of other ways of representing a research study, other ways of representing what we've learned from a research study. There's a very good fit of that idea with mixing methods. Because if you take what you've learned from a mixed method study and put it in a poem or a story, it's a kind of neutral place where you can represent both numbers and words. So I think it's a great question. And I think I have, in those kinds of ways where I've invited students to share what they've learned in this class with me in whatever format they may choose to do. I had a dance once, and unfortunately I don't know enough about dance to have any idea what she was saying. But so in that sense, there is a parallel, or there's some opportunities as a teacher to encourage other ways of representing what students have learned in the class. I don't know if that's the question you asked, but that's what came to mind.